Good morning, everybody. Welcome to Half and Half this morning. I hope you're having a good start to your September. I know lots of things happened this week. We started over at UW-Madison. I think probably a lot of people either started school or maybe have been in school with their kids. But I know in Madison, I think we just got started this week. So lots of lots of changes going on. We are entering the fall in this new version of lots of stay-at-home learning. Um, so yeah, just I hope that's going well for everyone. I know that's a lot of changes in a lot of families. So this morning, we're going to look at the shoulders and just kind of move around through the upper body a little bit. And then, of course, the rib connection is always a really powerful part of how you stabilize what's going on in the upper body, the neck, and the shoulders. So a couple weeks ago, we did this class where we talked about the ribs, the shoelace image, like you could, the fronts of your ribs, like you could thread a shoelace through and just tighten that shoelace a little bit, and that would draw your ribs together, and worked with really feeling that connection there. So we're going to use that feeling for sure as we start working with the arms and the shoulders. And, you know, especially in Pilates, you hear a lot how a really strong upper abdominal connection and this like rib feeling supports healthy movement in your shoulders. It's a thing that's true anywhere, but you do hear about it a lot in Pilates. Pilates likes to talk about it. But of course, it's just something that's very true about the body. And one of the reasons is, I think, you can see if I start to lift my arm a certain amount, um, and I keep this really solidly in place, then I actually have more freedom. Like I create a little more mobility in the shoulder. It gets to come up a little more and stretch a little more and open a little more. And if I don't have this rib connection, then when I start to go above a certain height, it's a little lower than 90 degrees, then my rib cage moves with it. As my arm comes up, my shoulder doesn't have a lot of mobility. And so now this is pretty tight, and back in my mid back is pretty tight, and up in my neck is pretty tight. Like all these things have to work differently because I'm no longer lined up in a really healthy posture. So if I can get this to come together and hold my posture really in position here, then I have some freedom to move my arm around. And if I have freedom to move my arm around, then I can do more things, right? I was thinking about like grabbing a cereal box. I don't even really eat cereal, but for some reason that image is really clear, like grabbing that box off of the top of the refrigerator and then or top shelf or whatever that is, and being able to keep this really in place. So I can work the shoulder a little better, I can open the shoulder a little better, but it doesn't affect my posture. My arm just gets to move around. So this is why we talk about that in Pilates. So we're going to start with something pretty familiar, probably lying on your back with your knees bent, hands on your lower ribs, and a couple breaths just warming up your tying the shoelace feeling, your rib connection feeling there. So as you inhale, you could think of the ribs going wide, and as you exhale, tighten the connection in the front of the ribs, ribs drawing in towards each other. And then inhale, letting the breath move a little bit sideways in the ribs. And exhale, drawing together. And you can breathe whatever rhythm you want. That's just sort of my rhythm. But working with that image. Now, hopefully you're starting to feel that connection. Maybe you've practiced this a lot, or maybe it's kind of new to you. Either way, hopefully you're starting to get a little bit of movement through there, some clarity through there. So then as we add the arm into it, as we add the shoulder movement into it, I've been talking about the shoestring pulling together. That's a very kind of horizontal image across the front of the body. When that happens, there's also a dimension of the ribs being kind of pulled down towards the waist, that there's a little bit of a down feeling that way, like we anchor the ribs that way. So we draw them together, there's a feeling of them anchoring down this way. And that's going to serve me, because if my arm goes overhead, it's going to give me an oppositional feeling that the more the arm reaches back, the more the ribs draw down towards the hips. So we're going to work with that feeling a little bit. Here we are. You take your breath in. And as you exhale, the ribs come together. And you think of them anchoring down towards your waist. The more my arms reach overhead behind me, the harder I have to work that connection, right? They're really trying to, the weight of my arms wants to pull my ribs up away from my waist towards my chest. So I'm really going to work to keep them down and then back up to the ceiling. So we'll work with that a few times. So on your exhale, ribs together, anchor the ribs towards the waist. Exhale, feel how the shoulders have some movement. They float up a little bit off the ribs as the arms get farther back. And then just stop. If you feel your ribs pulling up, even if your arms are higher than mine are, then pause there and come back up. Once the weight of the arms starts pulling your ribs up, it means there's some tightness in your shoulders. It's like you've hit some tight places in there. So you just pause wherever it is. Breathe. Strengthen the connection. And that tightness will start to reorganize. And then the next time your arms are up to the ceiling, resting and relax everything there. And then bring yourself up to sitting. We're going to flip around onto your hands and knees and see if you can feel some of that same connection, or see if we can work on some of those same connections on your hands and knees. So I've got my hands shoulder distance apart. My elbows just a little bit bent, so I don't have them locked and pushing forward. So as my elbows bend a little, you can see when they're locked and pushing forward, the inside of my elbow is kind of pushing forward. When I bend them a little, I also let them just kind of rotate. So when they bend more, they'll bend very far sideways. I'm not going to bend them that much, but that's what would happen. So I'm looking for that position right there. That helps me get my thumb on the ground better, helps me feel my whole hand on the ground a little better. The more I straighten and push, the more it rolls me towards my pinky side of my hand and kind of off my thumb. So a little bit of work to keep the elbows in this position, but that's what we want, right? We want to kind of strengthen in the upper back, in the triceps, and get the whole hand down. Now for me, right away, my ribs want to sink down. They want to kind of drop. So I'm going to add in that feeling of the shoelace. And it feels like it draws my ribs in and a little bit like up towards the ceiling at the same time. Puts my rib cage in place there. So all of that, that's actually a lot of work going on. I have both hands grounded, my elbow soft, my upper back's working, my ribs are drawn together. And then I'm going to practice holding that, all that together as I reach the right leg back. My toes are still on the floor, my knee is off. And then, my weight shifted a little bit. That's okay. you're going to try as best you can to keep it pretty centered and to keep your weight pretty centered between your two hands, but it's probably going to feel a little different than when both legs are down. That's fine. And then keeping your ribs drawing together, we're going to take the right leg up and then lower the right leg down. And a couple times like that. It's not so much about getting my leg high, it's about keeping my ribs drawing together as the leg goes up and down and trying to keep all my upper body connection really in place. And the more my leg comes up, like as it gets a little bit higher, I have to work the rib connection a little more. I have to pull the shoelace a little more. And then I'm going to bring the right knee in next time and reset back in center. So soft elbows, broad hands, ribs connected through the front. Feel where your weight is. Notice what happens as your left leg reaches back. Probably your weight shifts a little to the right, but you're going to try to keep it pretty centered. And then reignite, like reset this feeling in the ribs here. So it's really clear. As your left leg comes up, you have to draw the ribs in a little more. And then tap the toes back down. And up and down a few times. Staying really organized in your upper body. A little bit of softness in the elbows. Not too high with your leg. Just a little bit of, just kind of testing your rib connection here with a little lift and lower. And then back to hands and knees again. And reaching back towards child's pose. Take a couple breaths here. And then coming up to sitting. Okay, so let's do a couple things. We're going to get into a little bit of strengthening here and then work on some of this arm movement and some different exercises. So let's go on your back again and hands behind your head. The mini crunch. Just like the frosted mini wheats, the little tiny ones, right? We're just doing the mini crunch. So elbows a little bit lifted. So in this position too, and maybe you can feel it, if you let your elbows just sink down to the floor, it kind of pushes your rib cage up off the mat, lower and upper ribs. Your shoulders are really heavy, but your rib cage is really pulled up. That was kind of that posture I was showing at the beginning, that your ribs get pushed forward to get your arms up overhead. So I'm going to lift the elbows, but the point of lifting the elbows is so that I can draw my ribs in and down again. And then again, I have to work my arms a little bit, as well as just kind of these deep muscles in the arms have to work a little bit as I find the ribs drawing together. And then that's going to take me in the mini crunch. Bring the head up. I'm going to keep feeling. Pull the shoelace a little tighter. And then same thing as I come down, I don't want to drop the elbows open right away. I want to keep some attention on the ribs until the head comes down. And take that again. Exhale, ribs together. That supports you as your head comes up, not too wide in your elbows. And then earlier I was talking about this other connection, the ribs down towards the hips a little bit. You could also think of that feeling as you go down, keeping a little bit of a relationship there, letting the ribs draw towards the waist. One more time, we're going to take it into the 100 this time. Set yourself up. Once you get your head up, stay there. Do a little more. Do just another breath. And as you exhale, a little deeper into it. And then find your 100 position. We'll take some pumps. Inhaling 5. Exhale, ribs together. Inhale. Exhale. So even here, you might feel the relationship between your ribs drawing together and your chest working less. Sometimes your chest gets really tight in the 100, really pulling tight. Can you keep the chest a little more open to pump your arms? And think of the ribs doing the work instead. Easy collarbones. 3 more. And then lowering your head down. And relax here. Take a couple breaths. Legs come straight out. Feet flexed and legs together. And then from there, we do like a 2-inch pull in with the heels. So your knees are bent, but they're not very bent. They're just coming up a little bit off the floor. Sometimes if you get a massage, they put a pillow under your knees, or like if you have back problems, you sleep with a pillow under your knees. It's about that far, right? It's just a little bit up there. So roll up. When we do the roll up, there's this piece of roll up where we take the arms back overhead. So maybe this is what wants to happen is your arms go overhead, right? I can get my arms all the way to the floor, but my ribs are pulled up and my mid back is tight. And that means when I start the roll up, my mid back is going to stay tight and do a lot of work. So from the very beginning, I want to feel that rib towards the pelvis, shoestring in the front ribs. I'm going to let the arms, the shoulders move a little bit, the chest relax, but keep the ribs really on and engaged. Never going to touch the floor. I want to work against the weight of the arms. I don't want to just have the floor do it. So my arms come up to the ceiling. I'm already engaged. My head comes up. I engage a little more. Now maybe I grab the legs and pull. That would be fine. All the way to reach forward. And then here too, as you start to go back, whether you're holding onto your legs for support or reaching your arms forward, ribs are connected. Less chest, more ribs. All the way down. And here's another opportunity. Arms going back. Ribs stay engaged. Inhaling. Exhale, relax the chest. Shoestring the ribs. All the way forward. Inhale, starting back. Exhale, relax your chest. Shoestring your ribs. And keep them engaged. Arms reach overhead. A couple more. I'm going to show a couple with my hands using my on my legs. And it's still the same image. Less chest and more ribs. Elbows stay a little soft so that I stay in my triceps. And that lets me access the ribs a little more. 2 more. Last time. and then resting at the bottom. Okay, so I'm going to show one that we don't do super often in this class. So you might want to sit up and watch, but it's a really good one to work with this concept we're talking about right now. It's called the double leg stretch. So if you take other Pilates classes, you may know it already. And I think we've done it a couple times in here, just not a lot. So in the double leg stretch, both knees are bent in and your head is lifted up and you're looking into your belly. So I have this nice heavy pelvis. I've got my ribs shoelace pulled and I'm up here. Now this same thing of the arm going back overhead, that's what's happening. So I'm going to reach my legs out as my arms reach up by my ears, and then the arms circle around until I grab the ankles, right? Maybe you've done this before, something like it. Now, what happens so often in this exercise is that same ribs popping up, arms going too far back thing. So as your legs go out and your arms go overhead, so many times people reach so far back that they fall back. The ribs start to pop up, so they come back in, you're kind of stuck here. And now I have no support here. Everything's in my neck. My arms are way, way back, but it's not really doing me any good. And it's a funny thing. The arms have to feel so far forward to be doing this correctly. Like the kinesthetic feeling is often different than what it looks like. So as I do it, I think ribs in, ribs in, ribs in, and arms not very far back. And I can find that feeling again of the shoulder, the chest being a little more open, the ribs really drawing in and then around. And you might look at me and think, oh, her arms are going pretty far back. But they don't feel like they're going very far back. They feel like they're staying pretty far forward. So if you're not already trying it, let's give it a try and just kind of work with that feeling as you go. So knees are in, exhale, head comes up, shoestring, and then as the legs reach out, keep drawing the ribs in, only taking the arms as far as you really keep that feeling. Imagine they stay more forward than you think you need to, and just really focus in on the ribs connecting. 2 more. And then all the way back down. So typically for me, I know, and for a lot of people, it'll just give you a lot more of this feeling here. And then hopefully it allows for it to not be so tight up in your chest. Come up to sitting. Okay, so let's go back to that hands and knees position for swan. And this time we're actually going to take the hands just a little more in front of your shoulders, not right underneath your shoulders like we sometimes do. But otherwise the same. Soft elbows, nice broad hand on the floor, and then starting to feel ribs connecting in the front, drawing together, lifting up. So as you start to move forward into your swan position, just keep finding that feeling of ribs connected, elbows a little soft. And then notice what it's like in your chest. It doesn't mean you have to make a big stretch in your chest, but imagine you have some ease there. It's not pushed really far one way, it's not pulled really far the other. The ribs are connected, and the chest just gets to let go. Pushing back, hands and knees. So we'll do it a couple times in and out of it. Set your upper body. Let your ribs draw together. And as you get more and more forward, pay attention. It's like every little muscle fiber, one at a time, in your pectoralis muscles, pectoralis majors. Let's go. Coming back. A couple more. And if you can't quite go as far as I'm going, that's okay. You could stop in more of a plank feeling if that's giving you the feedback on this image. Or you might be able to get a little farther and still feel the ribs connected. Last one. Easy elbows. Okay, so I'm going to take that all the way to the floor, which is a little harder, I think. So now, if you can see my ribs here on the mat, and when you're laying on your belly, it's really, really common that the low ribs already are kind of pushed into the floor. And that is kind of one of the ways we hold our head off the floor a lot of times, is we just kind of tip at that part, and the head can be then just off the floor pretty easily, especially if you tend to have your head be a little forward of your chest. We often get in this position right here. So finding the ribs drawing in and together, it's going to move the whole thing. It's going to move my collarbones closer to the mat, and it's going to let my ribs draw together and up off the mat. So I'm going to see if I can show it one more time. I'm going to put my arms in front of me just to show it a little better. So a lot of times kind of in this position to start, the collarbones are kind of lifted. You can see my armpits are really far off the mat, and the lower ribs are really pushed down, versus the ribs really drawn together and the chest a little bit lower. So we want to see if we can find that feeling. Ribs drawing in and up, and collarbones sinking towards the mat. Then as my hands go under my shoulders and I push my hands into the floor, I want to find even more shoestring rib connection. And I start to feel some work, not too dissimilar to a push-up kind of feeling, even though I'm not even going anywhere, just that feeling of pressing the hands, drawing the ribs in. Now, as you start to come into swan, stop when you feel like you're about to lose that connection. It's not very far, actually, before it feels like, ooh, that wants to let go. And then come back down. So just take that very, very, very early feeling, like head, collarbones. Where's the moment where it kind of puts pressure on that connection? You want to let it go. See if you can keep the ribs drawing together. I made it a little farther that time. Coming back down. So we're going to slowly play with swan. You might stay in the super, super low range. You might find you can, okay, it wants to let go, but I'm going to keep it on. I'm going to push the hands more. You might find you can go farther. Maybe you go halfway up and come back down. If you make it pretty far up, then the new challenge is, can you keep it all as you go down? Because that's even more challenging. Last one of these, and we'll do a little handoff. And then pushing back to hands and knees. And I'm going to pass it off to my producer and see what kinds of tricks he's got up his sleeve.
All right, so a lot of you know of me as a yoga teacher, and I've brought a lot of these ideas into yoga. And so we can use the breath to help make that connection, to help tie that shoelace. And keeping that shoelace tied, as Colette shared with you, is a way for you to really get an opening in the shoulders. A lot of people comment, they say, why have you switched the breathing in yoga when we always inhale, take the arms up, exhale, fold in yoga? And the reason is for exactly this, to open the shoulders more effectively, to have more freedom in the shoulders, and to do it in a safer way, less risk of injury, to use the breath to make that connection, and thus I've switched the breathing. So let's take a look. A lot of you know this idea. So with your feet about hip width apart, inhale into your back to help loosen your upper back. Then lightly press the exhale out. Use the exhale to cinch the shoelace. Inhale, free your upper back. Exhale, cinch your shoelace. Now with this exhale, cinch your shoelace and then lightly keep it cinched as you inhale. That's the breathing right there. Now let's let the breathing support movement, support opening your shoulders. Exhale, arms to the side up. Inhale, arms down. Exhale, arms to the side up. Inhale down. One more like that. Exhale, as you exhale, ribs go down, arms go up. Exactly what Colette was sharing with you. Inhale, folding. Now let's add in the roll up movement. Exhale, arms to the side. Inhale, articulating your spine as you come forward. And I'm going to pause here for a few breaths to release your neck. Let your head hang. I rode my bike more than 50 miles yesterday, so my neck's a little tight from that. So this feels really extra good to let my head hang. Now with the next exhale, reach the crown of your head forward. See if you can keep that length in your neck. Now this is a lot like what you did in the swan, isn't it? So use this exhale to knit your ribs. And use this exhale to look a little bit more forward, articulate your upper back. Inhale, then folding. Exhale all the way up. Inhale, arms down. Now let's do that same thing just a little bit faster. Exhale, arms to the side up to help open up your shoulders, thus your chest. Then inhale, folding to liberate your spine. Exhale, gorilla to liberate your upper back. Inhale, folding, a chance to release your neck. Exhale all the way up. Inhale, arms to the side. Now the same thing quietly together. So now to work a bit on standing posture. So first step is to reinforce your foundation. So shift your weight ever so slightly to the front of your foot. Not that you're lifting your heels up, far from it, but to enliven your arches. have just a little bit more weight in your forefoot and a little less weight in your hind foot. Feel how that naturally engages your belly? Now use this exhale to connect your thorax to your abdomen. Lightly keep that connection as you inhale. So now I feel in my body, thorax directly above abdomen, directly above foundation, but my head is pretty tipped forward. So keeping that dynamic midsection integrity as you lift up through the crown of your head so that your head and neck are stacked above thorax, abdomen, and base. Good. Now to open up your chest. Lift your shoulders a little bit up. Draw them a little bit back. And almost imperceptibly, let them relax down. Don't pull them down. Just let them relax. And we'll take a few breaths here. So in a moment, we're going to continue the discussion of opening up your shoulders. Big, deep inhale to fill your back. Exhale, ribs down as you float your arms up. Inhale, fold. Exhale, gorilla. Inhale, stepping back to dog pose. So dog pose is a wonderful opportunity to put everything we've discussed into practice. So use the out breath to cinch your shoelace. Keep that cinching as you inhale. Then planting your hands onto the floor, keep your hands placed where they are. And that wall behind you, move your legs and hips back toward that wall to further open up your shoulders, keeping that thorax, abdomen integrity. And we'll hold here for a count of 5. 4, steady breathing. 3, 2, 1. And then coming down. So remember how you worked with Colette with the arm position, the weight in your hands, the connection of your ribs. So the same exact way you worked with a swan, bring your hips forward and downward. And the exact same way you worked with swan, neither pulling nor pushing, finding that midline integrity. As you then lengthen your neck to take your gaze forward. Few breaths here. Then moving back to hands and knees. Turning your toes under. And back to downward dog. A few breaths here. With the next exhale, step your feet forward to gorilla. Inhale, folding. Exhale all the way up. Inhale, arms down. So let's put that into application in an entirely different way than what we've done so far. Begin by stepping your feet apart as we move toward triangle pose. Then turn your left foot in and your right foot out. Now with your next exhale, bending that knee, taking that right knee straight to the side. And we'll pause here for a few breaths. So we've been talking about how the midsection relates to shoulders. It also relates to hips. It is not uncommon that simply making this movement right here, those lower ribs jut forward, which puts a lot of strain on the neck and the lower back. Tie your shoes, keeping that thorax abdomen integrity as you then tip your hips. Now, more often than not, we end up with elbow on knee. Today, a little bit different. Catch your shin with your hand. And see if you can keep the top of your head where it is as you slowly straighten that front knee. Long spine. Then taking the upper arm up toward the ceiling. And then toward the floor, turn your head and neck. Inhale, coming up. And turning back toward the front. Second side, turn your right foot in and your left foot out. Exhale, bending, knees straight to the side. Pausing there. So we'll take the next few moments quietly implementing what we've been talking about in your own body. Then once you've connected thorax to abdomen, follow your exhale. Tip your hips. Rather than elbow to knee, get your shin with your hand. And then to help elongate your lower back, decompress your lower back, straighten your front knee, keeping your head where it is. Now I'm working on a little bit of shoulder stuff on this side. So I'm not going to take my arm up toward the ceiling, my right arm, but feel free to if you'd like. Then to help further open up your chest, rather than turning to look up, to get most benefit in your shoulder and chest, toward the floor, turn your head and neck. A few more breaths here. Inhale, coming up. Turning back to the front. And then stepping your feet together. So now building on what you did with Colette a little bit earlier on the floor, let's make our way to the floor. Using a sun salutation to do so. Inhale into your back. Exhale, arms to the side up. Inhale, folding. Exhale, gorilla. Inhale, stepping back. We're going to take a few breaths here. Then in a moment when we come down to the floor, we'll stretch our arms in front of us. With the next exhale, come down to your knees and route to your belly. And then reach your arms forward. And starting out with your hands a little bit wider than your shoulders, elbows a little bit bent, elbows a little bit lifted up off the floor. Now with the next exhale, lift your head up. And we'll pause here for a few breaths. So in a moment, we're going to work on lifting the lower ribs up. With the exhale, lift your lower ribs. And if they don't come up, that's okay. See if you can lighten them. So it's like a turbocharged version of knit your ribs. As you came up, maybe you noticed that your elbows, they straightened automatically. Exactly. You're on the right track. We'll take a few more breaths here. And then coming down, resting your forehead on your hands. And right here, this is called crocodile. And it's really good for opening your upper back. 3 deep breaths to do so. And once again, bring your hands forward. Elbows a little bit bent, elbows a little bit lifted. And then with the exhale, lift your head, lift your chest, keeping your shoelace cinched, keeping that thorax abdomen connection. And then to help work on further releasing your upper back, toward your right, turn your head and neck. Few breaths here. Then back to the middle. Then the other direction to your left. Few breaths here. And then back to the middle. And then coming down. Crocodile. Have the other hand on top this time. Few deep breaths. Now, in doing the deep breathing, because your chest is more or less fixed in place, maybe you're already feeling how the deep breathing opens your upper back. One more deep inhale, infusing your back. And exhale, bring your hands next to your ribs. Full deep inhale here. Exhale, push up to your hands and knees. This helps build an upper body strength. And then moving back to dog pose. And we'll take a few breaths here. And then coming down to your knees. Coming into a seated position. Then joining the soles of your feet together. So sometimes called butterfly pose, or sometimes called cobbler. You could either grab hold of your feet to help sit upright, or bring your hands behind you to help sit upright, either one. Cinching your shoelace, opening up your chest, lengthening your neck by lifting up through the crown of your head. I remember way back in the day, we were kind of crazy here. We used to put weights on our thighs. I just cringed to think about that because we really didn't understand how to release tension in the body. So rather than putting weights on your thighs to try and increase flexibility, lift your knees up a little bit. Then think about lengthening the undersides of your thighs as you take your knees not to the floor, but away from each other. Right, So what is the old expression? You catch more bees with honey than vinegar. Same with the human body. Work with the body with finesse and compassion to enjoy freedom in the body. We'll take a few more breaths here. And then bring your knees up. And then stretching your legs out in front of you. Remember how we've been inhaling into the back? And then we take the arms up with the exhale. No, that's reverse from what a lot of you are used to, but hopefully it's making more sense how that's really about opening your shoulders and opening your chest. But let's explore it here in folding forward. Begin with the inhale to open, broaden your upper back. Use the exhale to reinforce the cinch the shoelace as you take arms up. Inhale, folding forward. Deep breathing. And then with the next exhale coming up. And now resting on your back. So your choice, whatever way is comfortable on your back. Could be resting on your bed or a sofa, maybe on the floor. We'll take a few moments here to get situated. Maybe a bolster or a blanket behind your knees, like Colette mentioned, if you have received some body work. And then if you feel comfortable doing so, closing your eyes. Let your body melt into the floor. Quite often there's like a boundary layer between our bodies and what supports them. So inviting your body to fully melt into, sink into what you're lying upon. In relaxation, which is so important, especially in these stressful times, it's really tempting when we find a place that's tense or tight to try to make it relax. And more often than not, it doesn't relax. And at least to some extent, there's a frustration that arises. One step forward, two steps back. What to do when you feel a place that's tense or tight? Invite it to relax and make that an open-ended invitation. If the area relaxes, That's okay. If the area remains tense, that's okay. And this is the significant perceptual shift from guided relaxation to meditation. We'll take a few more moments here quietly. And then if you've closed your eyes, opening your eyes. And then as you feel ready, coming up to sitting. All right. So thank you all for coming by today. If you have any comments or questions, feel free, please, to write those in the chat box. In the meantime, we're really excited to roll out a lot of new classes for this fall. Please check out our schedule on pilatesonharrison.com or scottandersonyoga.com. Any comments, questions? I see a nod, yes? In prompt one, how far down do you bring your hands? You demonstrated arms way forward and then brought them arms closer to the shoulders. So you can place them along that line where the shoulders are comfortable. Yeah. So the question is, when I was on my belly and I was doing that version of classic Cobra, the placement of the hands. So in general, I'd say shoulder width plus, a little bit wider than your shoulders. And then how much should the elbows be bent? How far out should the hands be? I like to start with a little bit of a bend. And then as you come up, naturally the arms are going to straighten as you do that. And then you check in. Are my shoulders really reaching forward? If yes, bring the hands a little bit more in. Or if you feel kind of constricted, maybe your hands need to reach a little bit farther out. So it's definitely sort of a trial and error, excuse me, and get a sense or a feel for chest open, back open. Excellent. Thank you so much. And let's do this again real soon.